breakfast, Southlanders are being offered the chance to test the nitrate levels in their drinking water. Most of the water New Zealanders drink from their tap has 1.0, yep, that's right, sorry, I'm very bad at maths, milligrams per litre or less of nitrate, so not a lot. However, around 800,000 New Zealanders could be exposed to levels of nitrate that are potentially harmful. So from next week, Greenpeace is holding free nitrate water testing to inform people about the levels of nitrate in their drinking water. Christine Rose from Greenpeace joins us now. Good morning, Christine. Thank you for coming in. What's the concern that's prompted this offer of free testing?
Everybody has the right to safe and healthy drinking water. It's a fundamental human right, and no one should be worried that their water is unsafe to drink. But for at least 800,000 people across New Zealand at the moment, that is a concern with potentially elevated nitrate levels in their drinking water. So we're offering rural people on bore water supplies the opportunity to come along and have their water tested so they can be comforted perhaps, or informed about what their levels look like.
All right, so you're going to Lumsden,
Gore and Ashburton.
Why have you picked those areas? Because you're worried about the amount of nitrates you think will be in the bore supply water?
That's right. We have done water testing there in the past, in 2021, and there were elevated levels of nitrate in some people's drinking water, and there are elevated levels in those intensive dairy areas, so Waikato, Canterbury and Southland. So where there's a lot of synthetic nitrogen fertiliser and a lot of cows, we are seeing elevated levels of nitrate coming through the aquifer and into people's drinking water supplies.
And that's the crossover here, isn't it? If you're a city slicker and you're watching TV in Auckland this morning, this is not about turning on the tap in your kitchen in your suburban residence. This is for dairy heavy areas where people are on bore water.
That's right. There should be no concerns with people's public drinking water, and that's carefully managed and monitored by those councils. But where people are reliant on bores in their backyards...
And 800,000's a lot.
It is, and it's a real concern because of the emerging evidence about health impacts, even at lower levels than the New Zealand standard.
Really? So what are those sorts of health concerns?
There are a number of potential health implications, and the risks increase at every milligram per litre of water as we go up. So they include bowel cancer and preterm birth complications and a range of other health impacts that are really concerning for those people who are on those bore supplies.
But just to be clear, that wouldn't be like I've had one glass of water and I'm going to get sick from it, right?
No, it's long-term exposure, and but you know, farm communities and households are reliant on this drinking water over a long period of time, and the nitrate contamination levels are increasing. And the evidence about those impacts is growing, so it is a real concern for people.
Have you found levels at concerning rates in your previous testing rounds?
We have. Greenpeace now has the biggest database of water tests across the country, at over 1,000 tests that we've conducted, both through town hall and mail-in water testing, and those dairy-rich areas have got really elevated levels.
And so what do you do when you know that those levels are high? Do you tell people at the time, you say, hey, your bore is not safe to drink long-term?
We do, and that's a really sensitive issue for people.
Yeah, I imagine that will put you into panic mode, wouldn't it? You can't even go home and turn on the tap.
No, and in fact there's advice from Plunkett, for example, in Canterbury, that shouldn't feed infant formula made with water from contaminated bores, that they should use bottled water, and so, you know, that's an expense and a real worry for those mums.
And do you report this to council when you come across these test results, or you know that there are contaminated bores? I mean, how does this get resolved?
We do, and that's why we're campaigning for a reduction in the amount of synthetic nitrogen fertiliser that can be applied to land, and also because that facilitates intensive dairying, we need to reduce the number of cows in these areas because they create concentrated urine patches, and that means that high contaminant loadings make their way through the soil, especially the porous soils in Canterbury and Southland, and then make their way up through the aquifer. So we've been running a long campaign to phase out synthetic nitrogen fertiliser and to reduce the dairy herd, which has the benefit for improving people's drinking water, but also can address climate change and polluted rivers.
But what do you do when you find a contaminated bore or someone can't go home and drink? What's the solution then?
We advise people that there are a number of actions they can take. So they can install water treatment, but it's quite expensive and not always 100% effective.
Yeah.
And so that's why addressing the contamination at source is the public health response that's most appropriate, and that's incumbent on the government to address that.
How close do you find the contamination is to the source? So is it someone from the same farm pulling from their own bore, or is this a farmer down the road impacting a family?
It can be both, and because the intensive dairying has increased so much, the herd has doubled over the 30 years between 1990 and 2019, and the amount of synthetic nitrogen fertiliser has increased 700%. And so these problems and this contamination is now widespread, and these aquifers run throughout these catchments, and so a number of
tentacles,
people...
Yeah. Okay, so quickly, where can people, if they do want to get their water tested, what do they do and where?
So run your tap if you're on a bore for about a minute and fill at least 200 mils in a clean container. Bring it along to Lumsden on the 18th, Gore on the 19th and Ashburton on the 22nd. And if you can't be there in person, we still run a mail-in water testing service for free that we make available to people so that they can be confident about what their water levels are like.
And what they're drinking.
Yeah, because no one should be worried that their water is unsafe to drink.
Christine Rose from Greenpeace, thank you very much for your time this morning.